Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Simone Knego. Simone is a best-selling author of The Extraordinary, Unordinary You. Simone is a speaker, entrepreneur, and mother to 6 multicultural children. With her bold witticism, larger-than-life personality, and fearless attitude, she is a powerful force for good. Sharing her journey of adopting 3 of her 6 children in foreign countries, her climb of Mount Kilimanjaro to raise cancer awareness, and all of the funny, scary, and inspiring stories that came along the way, Simone instills in her audience the powerful lesson that what you do matters. And it's the little things we do each day that make the difference. Please join me in welcoming Simone Knego. Welcome, Simone.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. I am so excited to have you. I have read your book. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I highly recommend it to people. If anybody is interested in parenting and all the adventures of life, they should read your book.
Thank you.
I'm in awe of your heart and soul and all that you give, but also the messages that you're sending. And so, work from the inside out. We like to start with the early years. Tell us about some of your earlier years and how they might have informed what you're doing now, or how it led you to where you are today.
Yeah, my early years are way different. That when I look back, my trajectory was not a straight line. I think that's probably true of a lot of us. But yeah, I actually started out as a CPA. I started off going to college because I was going to be a doctor, like my parents and like my sister. And then I failed organic chemistry, and that kind of changed my path right there.
I've heard that story from a few people.
Yeah. And I was good at math. And so I said, okay, accounting, that's what I'm going to do. And I graduated with a master's in accounting. I got my CPA, actually passed on the first time, which it's funny because I said to myself, okay, if you don't pass on the first time, let's just figure out something else to do. But I did pass. And I started off working as a CPA, and I realized that wasn't really where my passion was. And I realized at that point that I'm a big believer in it's okay to change your mind. So I've changed my mind many times. I've done many things in my life, and including working in medical sales, flipping houses. I've done my husband is always really supportive, but I've done some very different things, which, all led me to where I am today, which is an author and a speaker. And every experience I had really gave me these great stories to be able to share.
So I love it. I want to go back a little bit and then we'll go forward again. This happens a lot. I often take people back and forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm curious because, you think about some people have a harder time making those decisions to make changes. It sounds like you are less weary of change maybe than some people are. But so you got your master's in accounting, and you got your CPA, you started working as an accountant, and then somewhere in there you decided you just didn't like it. Did you have any hints that you might not like it while you were in the middle of studying it? Or did that just feel like a different path until you were doing it professionally that you realized it really wasn't for you. How long had you been doing it for?
I want to say that I really didn't realize when I was going through school, because I enjoyed the people that I was in my classes with.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the professors and I enjoyed the material. But it was when I actually started a real job where the idea in my mind was different from what actually was happening, which was sitting at a desk all day long. And that's not true of all accountants. So again,
Right.
love accountants. They make my life easier.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really the idea of sitting behind a desk in the position that I had and really limited conversation. And I'm a people person. I really like sharing stories. I like all those parts of human connection, and I didn't feel satisfied in that. So,
yeah. So you knew yourself well enough to know it sounds like fairly quickly that this wasn't going to fly for you.
Yeah. And I was young enough to not think of the implications of changing my mind back then, where I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. I can just do this now. And so I think that is really how I did it at that point, where now I'm a big believer in it's still okay to change your mind. And if you really don't love what you're doing, it's worth it to take the risk. Obviously, plan it out. It's not just dropping what you're doing tomorrow, but we have one life. We should be happy. We should enjoy what we do. And it definitely is possible. It's just taking the time to figure ourselves out.
Right. I think that's a key too, to take the time to plan it out. It's not just because I could hear someone thinking, well, she had a husband who was probably, bringing in some income. So of course she could make a change, but I'm just thinking for my listeners, for them. But I hear what you're saying. I think that when you made those changes, I'm sure you didn't just go into work one day and say, okay, I'm out of here today. You probably made a plan. And the transition from CPA to medical sales was not just, 1 week I'm a CPA and the next week I'm doing medical sales. There was probably some thought you put into it and some ideas that you had. Maybe you considered some other avenues, or what happened during that period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that, again, I can hear the listeners saying the same thing. Oh, and I was married. I got married when I was 21 years old. But no matter what choices you make, there are implications, right? There are different things that happen. And I am fortunate that I was able to do that at that, by 25, I had, I was doing something completely different. But I think the whole point of it is that it's that voice inside your head that tells you that you can't do things. Don't take the risk. Don't do this.
Right.
Just keep doing what you're doing. So there is a way to do things where you can still be okay financially and be able to take that risk.
Right. No, you're preaching to the choir here. I totally agree. And I think though that again, that planning comes into place. So by 25, you were doing something different. Whew, what a relief. And medical sales, I can imagine, is definitely not behind a desk. How long did you do that for? What kind of medical sales were you doing?
So I actually didn't do medical sales until a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. I've done many things. So that was, when I finished that, I actually taught horseback riding lessons.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
I taught horseback riding lessons. I ran a summer camp and I was still doing bookkeeping. So I was still doing stuff for, a couple of practices at the time, medical practices, but this was kind of something that I had a request from people around me. I had ridden horses since I was a little kid. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then it wasn't until we moved to Florida, I actually went back to school to be a teacher. This is why it gets very complicated. Changed my mind many times. Yeah.
This is great. So you went back to school and got your teaching credential.
Yeah. And I started teaching elementary school. And actually, for a couple of years, I taught in ESE classroom. And I loved it. The problem I had was that with 6 kids, I still needed a babysitter because they were young to take them to school in the morning, to pick them up after school. And I was spending as much as I made on the babysitter. And that's heartbreaking, right? When we think about like what our, in terms of value in society. I mean, teachers are, and we've seen it over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I've known it since day one with 6 kids. Teachers are our biggest partner. And, when you can't work because you're paying the babysitter as much as you're making, you gotta rethink things. And that's when I went into medical sales. I had an offer from a friend of mine that said, I guarantee that I can pay you more. You can have flexible hours. You'll be talking to lots of people. And I said yes. And I did that for about 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then from that, I went into this and went into writing my book and speaking. And that really, I stopped doing that just right at the beginning of the pandemic. So
I see. And the flipping houses, was that fit in somewhere in between? Or?
Yeah. That was somewhere in between with other things that I was doing. So,
wow.
Yes. Yep.
So you are so right. I don't need to tell you you're right. Careers are not formed in a straight line. It's like, as you're talking, you're naming every chapter in my book. It's like you just wrote my book, or you just named every chapter in my book as you're going through it, which is kind of funny. I almost feel like someone could write a really cool rap song about your careers, about the horseback riding and running a camp and flipping houses and medical sales and being a teacher. And so, what's interesting about all the different career paths that you've had, it sounds like you've really applied yourself to each one of them and given them their due and made very clear decisions each time you made a pivot. It wasn't like, oh, I'll do this for 6 months and that for 6 months. It sounds like you really spent time in each one. And, and let's talk about the full-time job of being a mom too. That's, and I know that out of the 3 children that you adopted, it wasn't like you just filled out some paperwork and somebody put a baby in your arms. Having read your book, I understand that there was a lot more involved in bringing these children into your life. So that in and of itself was super interesting to me. And meeting some of their families of the children and traveling long distances in difficult conditions. I think 2 of the children that you adopted were in Africa, and one of them was in Korea.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
2. Yeah. Ari and Millie are from Ethiopia, and Noah is from South Korea.
Yeah. So, that's just fascinating. It's just so interesting. More than interesting. I just loved reading about it and the way that you wrote about it. And so as you went through each of these transitions, it sounds like there were different factors that you were taking into consideration as you made the changes. So, for example, you went into teaching because you wanted to work with kids, or you wanted a job that wasn't behind a desk, or what? What was your...
For teaching, it was really about, I felt like I have a classroom at home. Let me put the skills that I use every day, into my career. And that's really kind of the beginning of that. And I really did love being in a classroom, and I wish there would have been, who knows, maybe one day I'll go back and do something, but, it was fun, and I felt like I was making a difference. And I think that's a big part of the things that I do too, especially now, is that am I making anything better? Am I doing something that I can look at my little corner of the world and say, I feel like, and it's not about having a big head at all. It's nothing to do with that.
No.
But feeling the positivity in the things that I do on a daily basis. And we can do that in whatever job we have, right? Like it's how we interact with people that really makes the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And how long did you teach for? I'm curious.
I taught for almost 4 years, and I wish it was longer.
Well, I have a hunch you might go back to that in some way. Although as a speaker, you're an educator, right?
Yeah, I definitely feel like by sharing my stories, if it impacts one person, if it changes one person's mind about something, that is education, right? So,
and then you went into medical sales, and that sounds like that offered you a lot of opportunity to work and to have some flexibility with 6 children. And am I feeding ideas to you, or was that true?
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I mean, there were definitely mornings where I still had to get either my mom or someone to come in to take the kids to school because I had to be at the hospital by 6:30 to be in the OR with the physician that was using a product. And so, so some days weren't flexible, but other days were great. And it's something I really liked as well, because I had this opportunity to interact with all different kinds of people, and meet so many interesting people and really learn about their lives, their stories, because I'm a big believer in really asking people about their lives, finding out what their story is, and seeing because you can learn something from every person you meet. Yeah. And I think it's such a powerful thing to just learn about other people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's why I do what I do here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's almost like I feel like you're saying things I would be saying. It's like I'm listening to myself in some ways, Simone. But there is something that you did, Simone, that I know I probably will never hear out of my mouth. And I bet you know what I'm going to say.
Having 6 children? No.
Yes, that's one of them, because I have one child, and that will not change. But there's something else you did that I probably will never claim I've done, and that is climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Tell us how that came about.
That was one of those things I joke and say it fell in my lap. It was, doesn't really fall in your lap, right? But it was not a bucket list item. It was a friend of ours had climbed it the year before with the Livestrong Foundation. So raising money and awareness for the Livestrong Foundation, which obviously helps cancer patients. And he asked my husband, are you interested? They're putting a team together for next year. Would you like to do it? And of course I joke and say my husband counted to 3 and said, no, thank you. Call Simone. He's like, I didn't count to 3. I'm like, well, you did say no, thank you. Call Simone. He's like, okay, that part I agree with. But it was when I got the call, I said, yeah, I want to do it. And it really, for me, was an opportunity to prove to myself that believing in myself, I could accomplish something like this, because I did struggle for years to believe in myself and to realize my value, to see what I was capable of. I think a lot of times from the outside, everything looks great, right? You look at someone and say, oh, they have it all together. Everything is, and I think we can't make those assumptions, right? So there was definitely a lot of things that I struggled with in terms of self-doubt. And this was kind of a moment in time for me to say, yeah, this is pretty scary. And yeah, I'm going to put in the work behind it. It's not just setting the goal, but putting in the work behind it. And I'm going to do this.
You don't do anything half-baked, do you, Simone?
Yeah, I don't think I do, actually, especially anymore. I really try to, and now that it really did have a huge impact in how I see myself, how I changed the way, not for me, it wasn't about changing who I was. And I know we've talked about this before. It was about changing the way I saw myself.
Right.
And I truly believe that about all of us, is that so many times we hear, oh, if you make these changes, your life will completely change. And for me, it's really about looking at yourself and realizing what you're capable of. So changing the way you see yourself, because we're all unique. We all have extraordinary pieces within us.
Yeah.
We just need to realize it. Mm-hmm. And when we realize it, we're willing to take more risks. We're willing to try new things. We're willing to reach out to help other people because we believe in ourselves.
Yeah. What do you think it takes, though, to even take those steps to see yourself that way? Now, you're somebody who has, even prior to that climb, you made a lot of significant changes in your life. You, switched careers many times. You adopted 3 children internationally. You already had 3 children of your own. So raising 6 kids, that's huge, I think. Don't you think?
I think so.
and it's especially huge, I think, when you have 3 of your own and then 3 children from, I know they are all your children. I'm not dividing them in any way, but it's a different dynamic when you're bringing children in from other countries. And, I know that your biological children were all for this. It's quite a dynamic to have all these new people coming into your home and welcoming them in. So my point is lots and lots and lots of change. And so how does someone change the way they see themselves? What is that? What do you think what's in that secret sauce?
Yeah, I think it's a daily, it's not battle, but it's really a daily process that we look in the mirror and we don't let anybody else define us or society define us and tell us what we're supposed to look like, who we're supposed to be. Because I think I did that for a long time. And, it's interesting because as I was writing my latest keynote, one of the things that I wrote about in there, and it's when I was 16 years old, I had a boyfriend, and I remember him telling me how he couldn't believe how fat I was, and how that the stretch mark, he couldn't believe the amount of stretch marks I had, and that I should probably start eating salads. And, there's this whole ridiculous conversation that I've forgotten many things in my life. This is one conversation that I really never got over. And I think it really was kind of my beginning with self-doubt. And I was tiny at the time. I'm probably 50 pounds heavier now than I was back then. And, so like it makes me laugh a little bit, but I was going over the speech with my daughter who's 18, and she said, as I went through that piece of the story, she goes, "Is that story about me?" And I said, "No, that story is not about you. That story is about me." And she said that it's crazy because she could have a similar story. And to me, that's heartbreaking that we are in a place that we're still defining ourselves by what other people say to us, and that we don't have that self-confidence and we don't, this is something that we need to work on every day. But really, for me, so part of the secret sauce is I do daily affirmations. I really try to build myself up. I had a moment where I was really negative about my weight. I had many moments. Who am I kidding? Many moments where I was very negative about my weight and not fitting into my clothes. And I don't think I realized the impact it was having on my girls. So things that I wouldn't ever say about them or even think about them. Yeah. I was saying it about myself and thinking about myself, to the point where one of my daughters said to me, "You're giving me a complex about my body." She said, how can I be happy? You tell me all the time how beautiful I am and that I look great. And then you talk so bad to yourself. She's like, how can I feel good about myself? How can I love myself if you can't love your own body? And yeah, that was like a big moment for me to say, she's so right. Like, what am I doing? Why am I acting like this? Why am I so angry at myself? And that kind of really helped me move forward and say, yeah, you're great. Like, look in the mirror and appreciate all the amazing things that you have,
Yeah.
that you do for other people and that you do for yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself.
Yeah. 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 And in a genuine way too, right? So it's not just like telling yourself good things just to try to talk yourself out of the other messages, but we are so conditioned, aren't we?
We're so conditioned to see the negative and not the positive, and be hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be that way. We have a choice every morning. When we wake up, we have a choice of how we interact with ourselves, how we interact with the world. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to be nasty. We can choose to be happy. We can choose to be miserable. Now, I understand there are outside factors that affect all of this, but we have a choice in how we interact with other people and how we interact with ourselves.
Yeah. And I like what you said about that. I often will say to people, suffering is optional. And I didn't make that up. That came from someone else. But I think, obviously there are situations in which people suffer when it's not optional. But in general, we have choices about a lot of things. And when we don't see it that way, that's when we get ourselves all caught up and stuck in those sort of negative spirals. And it becomes insidious. We don't even realize we're doing it. I applaud your daughter for calling you on that. I mean, what a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's great.
It was really helpful. It was helpful for me. It was helpful for my kids, my husband, because my husband all the time is like, why are you criticizing yourself? You look great.
Yeah.
And I would do it constantly. So it was really, that was an eye-opening moment for me, because him saying I look great, someone else saying I look great. But when my daughter said, the way you look at yourself is affecting the way I look at myself because you're being so negative to yourself, that kind of changed it all for me.
Right. Well, and then there's this thing in our culture, it's probably in other cultures too, about looks, right? My father used to always say to me, beauty is skin deep. When I was a kid, I had no idea what that meant. But now I do. But it's true. It's like, how do we teach our daughters, especially in this culture, to realize that, everybody looks different and it has nothing to do with what kind of person they are. And we really have to go beyond the looks and just appreciate, I'm glad that you look at yourself differently now. Thinking about how you look at yourself, how did you decide to become an author?
It fell on my lap. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I was doing a lot of volunteer work, and through the volunteer work I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I would share my stories. And the more I shared my stories, the more people would say, wow, you're so inspiring. And of course, back to the negative Nancy in my head, I would say, is she talking to me? And I had many people ask me, have you written a book? And I said, no, I'm not a writer. Again, limiting myself. I'm not a writer.
Right.
And I heard it enough times that I thought, well, why not? Why not try something like this? You love sharing stories.
Yeah.
Try it in a different way. And for me, it was an example of, again, it's okay to try something new. And, I love the process, honestly. I really felt, trust me, I love being on stage and sharing my stories that way, but really putting things down on paper and then seeing what you can do with it. So as I wrote this, I actually didn't have, other than my daughter, Olivia, really nobody else read any of it. I didn't even let my husband read it until it was completely done, like actually in book form.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because they're my stories, right? They're my perspective of stories that happened. So, and everybody has a different perspective.
Sure.
So I decided that I really wanted to keep it that way. And so when the book first came out and I got my first copy at home and I gave it to my husband and he read it and he cried when he read the stories, and he knows these stories, right? He's lived these stories, but the fact that they were still powerful to him in a different format, that it was a big deal to me. It was kind of like, wow, like this is the power of storytelling, the power of different types of media, how you can get your message across. And so, yeah. And so like, that's really how it started, is that enough people said to me, hey, you have great stories, you should write a book. And that's kind of the beginning of it. And I was like, you know what? We're in quarantine. You know, I started a little bit before, but some of my best stories came to me when I was, you know, because I hadn't been writing things down before that. I just was like sitting there with the chaos in the house. Some of my best moments were actually sitting on the couch with the kids being crazy like they always are. And and I'm like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of this time. Or, you know, so yeah. And there's so many stories. I was like, can I have like another version with all the stories that didn't make it into the book, you know?
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. There's one part, I think I even emailed you or texted you when I was in the middle of reading the book. There was something about, well, the stories of going to each country and bringing each of your children home from their respective countries and all the different people that you engaged with in that process was just, it had me staying up till all hours of the night reading. Aww. Those stories were just incredible. Just really went right through my heart. But then there was one that just had me howling, laughing. I think it was there were rats in the seats of your minivan or something. I just was like, now here's someone who has experienced so many different things. And I'm thinking, and now she has rats eating the seats of her car. I'm thinking, how does she get to have all of these things and that too? I was just laughing.
You too could have that. Yeah, no, that was one of those moments where it was one of those moments of truly being in shock of seeing that, like so the story is we're driving I have my son in the minivan. We're pulling out of the garage and I look back at him to make sure he's buckled, and you know, it looks like there's popcorn all over the seat. No, it wasn't popcorn. It was the foam from inside the seats. Mixed in with that foam was rat poop galore. And so I jumped out of the car. I'm like, get out of the car. And yeah, so they actually ended up, the insurance company, at first I thought, okay, this is, we'll get it cleaned up. It's not a big deal. And then I looked a little further. I was like, oh, this is kind of a big deal. There's like holes in every seat. Again, it was the moving trash can, right? With 6 kids.
Oh my God.
There was definitely crumbs in every nook and cranny in that car. And the rats or a family of 18, who knows how many rats were in there. But the insurance company ended up totaling the minivan because a rat ate my seats. So.
I mean, that's better than the dog ate my homework, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty gross one. And honestly, when I talk about self-doubt, I think years ago, I definitely would never have told anybody that story because, you know, is it a reflection of how I care for my car?
Oh my goodness.
You know, do I really care? No, because it's like a hilarious story. Who does this happen to? It happens to me. You know?
Yeah, I think that is the best story I've ever heard of how someone totaled their car. I mean, and it's the safest way anyone's totaled a car too. So
yeah. And it's the grossest way. It's very gross.
Well, it is the grossest way. And I can imagine that the insurance people probably had a little bit of a laugh through that too. So you probably brightened someone's day, I can imagine.
For sure. At least I hope so, right? I mean, it brightened my day because I was like, this is hilarious. Like, who does this happen to? Yeah.
It was. I mean, it had me going. So you said that the book came out of some speaking you were doing. How did you start speaking? I mean, that's something also that, not just climbing a mountain, but climbing Mount Kilimanjaro is not something that everyone does. And getting up on a stage or speaking in front of a group is also something that a lot of people aren't always comfortable doing. When did you start speaking and how did that come about?
I only started speaking once I started in that volunteer role. So this is not something I did my entire life. I did take a public speaking course in college. I don't remember much of it, but same thing. Like, I never thought I would be comfortable on a stage because I didn't believe in myself. I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. To stand up there in front of people and them looking at you and some of them judging you and, all of those kinds of things. But I don't think about it like that anymore. I really think about it as that, like, if I can help one person with my message, if there's 100 people listening and one person walks away with something new, hopefully more, but then it's worth it. And the more I did, the more I felt comfortable. And, and now it's like a real gig, right? Like I do it for real. And that is amazing to me. And it's so funny because my husband's like, I can't imagine anything worse standing on a stage. He goes, I wouldn't be able to breathe, like, he's like, all those people are looking at you. I was like, it's okay.
Well, hopefully they're listening more than the looking's fine, but hopefully they're taking in your message. So tell us about some of the speeches that you are giving these days. I know about them, of course, but I want my listeners to know about the kinds of speeches that you're giving and who your audiences are and I think we have a flavor of the messages that you're trying to send, but give us a little more information about those in case someone who's listening might want to bring you in as a speaker.
First, thank you for that. There's basically three speeches three topics that I'm focused on right now. One of them is, and this is how I kind of started my speaking, is my Jewish journey. We have obviously a very unique family within the Jewish community. My husband actually converted to Judaism after 20 years of marriage.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in there that kind of all make for lots of it. There's lots of interesting stories going on there. So that's one thing I speak about. Another thing is having a multicultural family, the experiences that we've had as a multicultural family, and some of it's sad, right? I mean, that's how life is. Like how sometimes my children get treated differently if I'm standing there or if I'm not standing there, and it's not okay. It will never be okay. And sharing our stories, I think it's important for other people to hear and to see what families go through. And again, I've said this many times. I'm not a Black mother. I can never imagine what Black mothers go through raising their children, but I am a mother of Black children. And it breaks my heart that they do get treated differently. And again, we live in a world where this shouldn't be. Like, we need to embrace the people around us and really learn from each and every person and not make these assumptions about people. And that it breaks my heart on a daily basis that we're not there yet.
So in terms of, I want to hear about the third, but I also am curious in terms of what you're saying about that. I'm wondering about the audiences that you're speaking to. Are you offering them advice or inspiration? I'm sure you're inspiring people, but I'm wondering, are you preaching to the choir in these speeches? Are a lot of the people there already on board with you? I would imagine many are, but I'm wondering if there are people coming who want to learn from your experience, are considering adoption themselves, are wanting to learn and understand through your experience how to better navigate the world we live in now, given, the world we live in now is just continually changing and things continually are surfacing that weren't surfacing a few years ago.
It's a great question. So kind of across the board. I mean, definitely I am not telling people what to do.
Yeah.
What I am telling people is, my information, how I see the world, what we've gone through.
Yeah.
And hoping that I can inspire them to, see things a little bit differently. And, some people are on board and other people are like, I had no idea.
Okay.
I hadn't, and
yeah.
So I think that it's really important. And that's why I always say it's so important that we all share our stories, because a lot of people, they don't know. And we live in bubbles a lot of the time,
mm-hmm.
right? Like we don't understand that how people live their lives differently. Even, for example, my daughter's class, her 8th grade class, one of their summer reading books was actually my book. Now, the teacher said to me, can we use it as a summer reading book? And I said, sure. I thought it was on the optional list. No, it wasn't optional. It was required reading. And so when my daughter found out that it was required reading for her class, she was like, she was a little sad at first. She was like, oh my gosh, every single kid is going to read about me. And I said, and you know how important that is for kids to understand that the world is a big place and kids grow up in different ways and families are made in different ways. And
mm-hmm.
I said, this is really important for other kids who live in their little bubbles to read about. And I was like, get over yourself. And she was fine. Like she got over herself about it. But like that goes back to the point in that sometimes we don't realize, we don't know what we don't know because we don't know it, right? Like we don't realize these things. So
yeah. So really a wide range of audiences, some people on board, some people who just get to see things at a deeper level that they hadn't before.
Yeah.
And your third speech, what's your third speech?
Yeah, that's the speech I've been working on most recently. And it's about women. It's really, I think I finally have a title. I have the speech. I've struggled with the title, but I really think it's going to be climbing past self-doubt, because I do talk about my climb of Kilimanjaro and really, looking at the statistics about women and how we see ourselves, it's unbelievable. So one of the ones that really sticks out to me is only 4% of women worldwide consider themselves beautiful. This was a study that Dove did. 4% of women worldwide. It's crazy to me. Like, so the other 96%, we look in the mirror and we say, no, we're not beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like, ooh, we got to work on this, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about teenage girls, by the age of 17, 78% will be unhappy with their bodies, right? So if we're, as grown adults, if we're constantly talking negatively about ourselves, guess what our daughters are seeing? Guess how that's making them feel about themselves. So obviously I realized that, and I don't know, too late. I don't think it's ever too late. I think we can always, work on these things. But thankfully, my daughter spoke up and said, you got to stop.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got some really powerful messages to share, powerful stories. And tell us, how can people find you and learn more about you or reach out to you if they'd like to learn more about your speeches, your speaking, the work you're doing? I know you're based in Florida and your book is easily available. How can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest place is to find me on my website, SimoneKnego.com, which is I'm the only Simone Knego in the world. I like to joke about that that's one thing that makes me unique. But you can find me there. And I would love to hear from people. If you read my book, reach out to me. I do have an active blog. I try to post an article at least a couple times a month, hopefully more. It's important to me to hear back from people and when I'm sharing my stories. And my book, you can find it basically any online store, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those, Target. Yeah.
And we'll have all of those links in the show notes so people will be able to find all of those. So one last question, and I know you have many great answers to this one. If you had to give somebody one piece of advice, someone who's thinking about making a transition, they want to make a meaningful transition, but they're maybe not sure how to get started, what would be your one key piece of advice to them?
That's a really hard question for one piece because I can talk about hours for this. But
I know.
I would say that the first thing is ask yourself what you want. What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? And if it's a change that you want to make, then write down the steps that you need to take to get there. It's not, again, none of this is a light switch, right? It's not you turn something on and off. You really, but what I've realized for me is that the decisions I've made, it's because I want to make them now. It's not because someone else is saying, this is what you need to do. I always say, ask yourself if you want to. And you got to start with believing in yourself. If you believe in yourself and then you put in the work behind it, then you can accomplish your goals.
Yeah.
But you got to put in the work behind it.
Right. Yeah. It's a long game. It's not McDonald's or Burger King.
Yeah. It's work. And you know what? We are worth the work. The things that we want, it's worth the work and it's worth the time and it's worth figuring out, who we are and, what we want, what we like, and really looking at ourselves and seeing that we make a difference every day because of who we are.
Absolutely. And on that beautiful note, I want to thank you, Simone, for being here. It's been a pleasure. I love your book. I love your messages. And I'm so excited to have you on Work from the Inside Out.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Simone Knego. It was so interesting to speak with her to learn about her fascinating personal and professional journeys. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you're interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's show, you can find them on the blog page of my website at tammygoolerloeb.com. Just look for episode 147. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Or perhaps maybe you're feeling a little stuck. Stay tuned for my new book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It'll be available in mid-November 2021 in print and digital ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent bookstores. If you were inspired by this episode with Simone, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.